Chapter 1: The History of Disney.
And now, here's another side of the plausible impossible.
Let us begin with a quick history lesson, followed by a theory on the history of Disney. If you ask anyone about what Disney movies were the best, what are their favorites, or which era of Disney was the best, they will most likely tell you that the Disney Renaissance era was the best hands down. In case you didn't know, the Disney Renaissance era began in the year 1989 and ended in the year 1999. This includes the films The Little Mermaid from 1989, The Rescuers Down Under from 1990, Beauty and the Beast from 1991, Aladdin from 1992, The Lion King from 1994, Pocahontas from 1995, The Hunchback of Notre Dame from 1996, Hercules from 1997, Mulan from 1998, and Tarzan from 1999. However, I'm using Disney Renaissance as an umbrella term to cover all Disney films released before the year 1999 just to make things simpler. These films, while many technically included magic, were much more subtle in their appearance of evil. There were no clear same-sex relationships, no transgenderism, no obvious you-know-what-ophelia programming, etc. Some Disney movies didn't even have any magic in them at all, such as Bambi, Lady and the Tramp, The Aristocats, The Great Mouse Detective, The Rescuers, and Tarzan, to name a few. People gifted by Jesus Christ with eyes to see had to look very closely and do some pretty deep digging in order to discover and reveal any type of sexual programming in Disney entertainment, which seemed to begin around 1977 with The Rescuers, where a naked woman was shown in a window. But you could only see it if it was slowed down frame by frame. That's so your subconscious mind holds it in, but your conscious mind has no idea what you just saw. Between the 1930s and the early 2000s, for the majority of society, even for Christians, Disney was considered to be overall safe entertainment for the entire family. So what happened? Well, the mainstream narrative is that Walt Disney and his older brother, Roy O. Disney, created the company together in the year 1923. After Walt Disney died in 1966 and his brother Roy O. died in 1971, the company Disney was now owned by Don Tatum from 1971 to 1976, Card Walker from 1976 to 1983, Ron W. Miller for 1 year, then Michael Eisner from 1984 to 2005, who all allegedly had a difficult time deciding which direction the company should go in. This is when they experimented with different artists and styles and ideas, which is why Disney has been fickle ever since. Now, that was the mainstream narrative that you will find if you look up any videos or articles on why Disney stopped being good in the 90s or anything on the Disney Renaissance era. My theory, based off of my own research and logic, is that this was not a coincidence at all. This is a cover story. If you do your own research and keep in mind, just like God warned us in Ecclesiastes 1 verse 18, if you increase your knowledge, you increase your sorrow, and it's about to get real sad real fast. So if you do your research, you'll know that Satan's minions have been planning for world depopulation and world enslavement, along with the mark of the beast and basically the end of the world, to begin in the 1980s.
Next, we turn to the town of Elberton, Georgia, the granite capital of the world. Elberton is famous for its production of tombstones, exporting some 250,000 tombstones every year. Oddly enough, the town that makes a living through death is also the home of what some consider the most threatening monument in America. A monument that some believe is a symbol for the coming Holocaust, promoting a depopulation effort at a massive scale.
It was back in 1979 when a stranger came to Elberton, Georgia. Now, Elberton, Georgia is on the eastern part of Georgia, very close to the South Carolina border. And this stranger said that he was part of a secret group, and they wanted to build a great granite monument.
This was done by a guy who gave a pseudonym, came in, paid cash, had this company set these things up in 1980, called himself R.C. Christian, but that's not his real name. It says right on the stones, a pseudonym.
Nobody knows his real name because that isn't his real name. Nobody knows who put the money up other than this fictional individual. Nobody knows what secret group he represents. Of course, Elberton mines granite. They make tombstones there. And they had the facilities to mine the granite. But he gave very, very specific directions as to how this was to be built, so that it would always be aligned in certain ways, so you'd always be able to see the North Star, so it would be aligned with the moon and with the various phases of the sun. And very, very similar to the Stonehenge that they have in England. So as the Stonehenge was a Druidic monument, this was to be the American Stonehenge, or it's known as the Georgia Guidestones. And on each one of the Guidestones is this message in a different language, actually 8 different languages, are the 10 commandments that come from the dark side. And the first one is maintain the world population at 500 million in constant balance with nature, which doesn't sound too bad until you realize that we've got over 6 billion people in the world. And if we're going to maintain the world population at 500 million in constant balance with nature, we're going to have to kill off about 90% or more of the world's population.
I went there and looked at those things and said, now, hold on a minute. Today's population is 6 billion. They want to maintain humanity under 1/2 billion. Looks like a lot of people got to die for their plan to work, which is, by the way, the plan. As Jacques Cousteau said, we'd have to eliminate 350,000 people a day. 1/3 of a million people a day would have to be eliminated to save Mother Earth. Bill Clinton said we need to reduce the population of the Earth to 1 billion. There are a lot of folks who would like to reduce the population of the Earth.
Aleister Crowley taught that a global massacre would be necessary to bring about the New Age. He wrote, "There is a magical operation of maximum importance, the initiation of a new eon. When it becomes necessary to utter a word, the whole planet must be bathed in blood. Before man is ready to accept the law of Thelema, or will, the great war must be fought. This bloody sacrifice is the critical point of the world ceremony of the crowned and conquering child as Lord of the Eon. This initiation takes place to remove Christians, who are considered the primary obstacle to world unity under Antichrist." A magazine called the Omega Letter says that there is only one obstacle to world unity: Christianity. It goes on to say that Christianity claims supernatural knowledge and divine revelation, and therefore should not be tolerated. Gus Hall, the former leader of the Communist Party in America, said, "I dream of a time when the last congressman is strangled to death on the guts of the last preacher. And since the Christians love to sing about the blood, why not give them a little of it?" A New Age group calling itself Solar Questers writes, "These are wondrous times because the world has gone through this terrific experience as it spins slowly back to its rightful orbit in the position that it should be in the heavens. And as this happens more and more comfort and well-being will come upon this world, and those who hinder will be removed, liquidated. They must be wiped clean off the face of the earth." Ruth Montgomery, sometimes referred to as the Herald of the New Age, said, "Millions will survive and millions won't. Those who won't will go into the spirit state because there is truly no death." The authors of a New Age pamphlet titled Cosmic Countdown claim to have received messages from a higher intelligence. The pamphlet says the world should be forewarned to be on the lookout for the decimation of populations. These peoples will eventually be replaced by the new root race about to make its appearance in a newly cleansed world. But perhaps the most disturbing comments come from New Age author Barbara Marx Hubbard. Researchers John Ankerberg and John Weldon report that due to her vast financial wealth and influence among leading world politicians and industrialists, she is having a major impact behind the scenes. She has been influenced by spirits for almost 2 decades. In her book titled Happy Birthday Planet Earth, Hubbard wrote, "The choice is, do you wish to become a natural Christ, a universal human, or do you wish to die? People will either change or die," she says. "That is the choice." Hubbard says, "There have always been defective seeds. In the past, they were permitted to die a natural death. We, the elders, have been patiently waiting to take action to cut out this corrupted and corrupting element in the body of humanity." Hubbard's spirit guides gave her a vision of things to come. They told her that out of the full spectrum of human personality, 1/4 is electing to transcend, 1/4 is destructive, and they are defective seeds. Now as we approach the quantum shift from the creature human to the co-creative human, the human who is the inheritor of God-like power, the destructive 1/4 must be eliminated from the social body. Fortunately, you are not responsible for this act. We are. We are in charge of God's selection process for planet Earth. He selects, we destroy. We are the riders of the pale horse, death. Jesus said, "Yea, the time cometh, that whosoever kills you will think that he does God a service. And these things they do unto you, because they have not known the Father, nor me. But these things have I told you, that when the time shall come, you may remember that I told you of them." But if all these things are so, what is a person to do? We asked that question of Pastor Joe Schimmel, Senior Pastor of Blessed Hope Chapel in Simi Valley, California.
Jesus said, "He that's not with me is against me." So you could be in the New World Order side, a black magician or a Satanist or somebody that's just caught up in that lie, and you're not for Christ, you're against him. But you could also be someone who's fighting against the New World Order and think you're doing good, but refuses to submit to the Lordship of Jesus Christ. Refuses to respond to the gospel and repent of your sins and turn to Christ as your Lord and Savior. And you're into the same condemnation and the same judgment as the Antichrist in the New World Order. And sadly, there's many people today that see what's going on to a degree, only part of the puzzle, yet they're in as much rebellion against God as many of these people that are in the New World Order. And my hope and my prayer is that people that see what's going on would not play into Satan's hands, because what's going to happen in the end is there's going to be many people fighting against the New World Order. And they're going to think they're going to be doing good. And Satan, I believe, in the end time is going to use that as newsreel clips for see what the Christians are doing, these crazy people. And Satan's going to use that actually against Christians in the very end. So we, true Christians that know Christ, need to submit to the Scripture, need to realize that if God calls us to die as martyrs, we need to die as martyrs. If God calls us to escape with our families into the mountains, we need to do that. But one thing we need to make sure we don't do is we don't want to make sure we're not the ones trying to blow up the Pentagon or, blow up the United Nations, because then what we end up doing is playing right into Satan's hands.
So, the whole world should have shut down about 40 years ago. But due to the mercy of Jesus Christ, the date has been consistently pushed back. Event 201 went according to plan, so we can guess that they're currently on schedule, which is a shame for those who are unsaved, and Agenda 2025 begins in just a matter of months. And Agenda 2030, along with Agenda 2035, are just around the corner. None of these agendas would or could be carried out if the public weren't prepared ahead of time. And do you know the number one way to prepare not just a village or a city or a state, but the entire world to accept the mark of the beast, the Antichrist, and a one-world Luciferian religion? The only way to prepare to condition people to accept this evil is to demoralize them. If you demoralize the masses, they will happily march to their deaths with smiles on their faces, only realizing the truth once it's too late and they've already begun to die.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets use the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage intelligence gathering looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place and
Yes.
who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents. Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be the greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, Actually, it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. He will go to Moscow to kiss the bottoms of new generation of Soviet assassins, never mind. He will create false illusions that the situation is under control. Situation is not under control. Situation is disgustingly out of control. Most of the American politicians, media, and educational system trains another generation of people who think they are living at a peacetime. False. The United States is in the state of war, undeclared total war against the basic principles and the foundations of this system. And the initiator of this war is not Comrade Andropov, of course. It's the system. However ridiculous it may sound, the world communist system or the world communist conspiracy, whether I scare some people or not, I don't give a hoot. If you are not scared by now, nothing can scare you. But you don't have to be paranoid about it. What actually happens now, that unlike myself, you have literally several years to live on unless the United States wake up. The time bomb is ticking. With every second, the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to.
I believe that Disney wasn't merely experimenting with their style or a new direction to take the company. I believe they were working on improving their MK Ultra techniques, while demoralizing society to condition them to gleefully accept their demise. Here is something interesting that I believe God just revealed to me because He kept putting it on my mind to research. Buckle up.
The American Central Intelligence Agency has been accused of manipulating citizens of countries all over the world, including Canada. At the moment, a number of Canadians are considering suing the CIA. They believe they are victims of covert CIA experiments. Tonight, 2 Canadians who feel the past 20 years of their lives were damaged by the CIA tell their stories publicly for the first time. They believe they were part of a CIA project called MK Ultra, a research project so secret that even the Canadian government was not informed that the agency was funding activities in this country. The CIA was seeking a new weapon, aimed not at the body, but at the mind.
The purge trials.
Dr. John Gittinger was the CIA's chief psychologist for 25 years.
There was continued pressure put upon anybody within the agency in connection with trying to explain or understand brainwashing. So we were charged with rather an elaborate attempt to try to find out chemical, psychological, any kind of means that people could use to influence the behavior of the people.
Nothing seemed too bizarre. To find out if sex could be used in spying, the agency studied San Francisco prostitutes and their clients. Using unwitting human beings as their guinea pigs, the agency tried everything: drugs, hypnosis, electroshock. Under code names like MK Ultra, the CIA spent 25 years and $25 million on secret mind control research. Brainwashing could be a powerful ideological weapon. They supported an extensive study of witch doctors in Nigeria. How, investigators wondered, did native healers cure mental illness? What mysterious drugs and potions did they use?
Used to bind up excited patients. A sleeping potion is then administered.
20 years ago, the Human Ecology Fund paid for this movie.
This soothes the patient's head.
But it was only recently that the man who made the film found out that he had been working with the CIA's money. Documents recently released by the CIA reveal what research Cameron proposed. To make patients receptive to repetitive messages, Cameron suggested using chemical agents to break down ongoing patterns of behavior. Chemical agents like LSD. LSD was almost unknown in the late 50s and not yet widely tested. Despite the horrible hallucinations small doses can produce, Dr. Cameron left some of his patients to unsupervised LSD trips. In 1956, Bob Logie was 18 years old when his severe leg pains were diagnosed as psychosomatic, and he was sent to the Allen Memorial Institute. When Bob heard the news reports of CIA-funded research at the Allen, he sent for his medical records. They revealed several doses of LSD. Today, Bob Logie lives and works in Vancouver, but he's still angry.
I feel like I've been completely used. I feel like my mind has been completely invaded. I suppose if guinea pigs have feelings, they'd feel like I do. I remember them telling me that I was getting smaller and smaller, and I really felt myself getting smaller. And they were bringing me back in time, way back, At one point, I almost felt like I was just about to be born, really, that far back in memory. And they were really, really probing, asking all kinds of questions, and I felt I didn't have any control. I had to answer. I didn't feel I had any control. I was completely, like they had complete control over me.
With some patients, Dr. Cameron tried a drastic treatment called depatterning. Massive doses of electroshock, 20 times more intense than the standard shock treatments used today, were administered to patients who were kept sleeping for days. But first patients were to be so depatterned that some even forgot their toilet training. Not all the patients ever completely regained their memories.
Many people, but some would reach what Cameron would call the third stage of depatterning. With that method, others would need 2 treatments a day, maybe for a week or longer. before they got to the third stage.
What would characterize the third stage of depatterning?
Well, the third stage, as defined by Cameron, was a loss of ability to orientate themselves. They knew who they were, but they didn't know where they were, and they didn't know what age they were.
They're given 2 or 3 times a day for 3 or 4 weeks, reducing the patient to a sort of animal, vegetable state.
To put patients to sleep for up to a month at a time, Dr. Cameron used a combination of depatterning and large doses of drugs. Individual taped messages were repeated to sleeping patients 15 hours a day. Dr. Cameron called his technique psychic driving. Bob Logie had driving therapy when he returned to the Allen in 1959.
I was there for a while, and I thought, I don't want to stay here, and I started to run away from the hospital, and they grabbed me, and then they put me on sleep treatment. And they kept you asleep for 23 days. And while I was asleep, they were shocking the heck out of me with electric shocks and playing tapes just over and over. I don't know what was on the tapes yet, but we're going to find out what was on the tapes.
MKUltra was a careless operation at its core, desperate to understand the inner workings of the human psyche in order to program and control the minds of the masses. Even though they conducted their churlish serpentine experiments under the protection of medical and mental hospitals, often preying on the mute, deaf, and clinically retarded, who either did not have a voice of their own or would not be understood or believed even if they did attempt to speak up, word got out about their demonic experiments, and they knew that they couldn't continue for much longer without there being an uprising. The period of time that the MKUltra project could possess its harsh appearance and remain relatively unconcealed had to be brief. This means that a new, more covert program would have to take its place. One that would have access to practically all of society without there being any uproar. Now, what new technology was sweeping the nation, soon to be in the living room of nearly every home in America, and soon the whole world? The silver screen, the television. And what held the attention of everyone in the family so well that even small children would patiently sit and watch? Why, cartoons, of course. And who did cartoons the best? Walt stinkin' Disney.
Walt was aware of the gap between himself and the persona he had created for public consumption. "I'm not Walt Disney," he once told a friend. "I do a lot of things Walt Disney wouldn't do."
I'll tell you what's the worst part about television is the programming, the philosophy, okay? I mean, the manipulating of your mind, the philosophy, the mentality, the system of thinking, the ideology. That's what's wrong with television. That's what's wrong with movies. That's where they're really getting in your head. Take, for example, Walt Disney, right? And many people that will preach against the TV, they'll preach against the movies, they'll preach against Hollywood because it's obvious that stuff is bad. But then they'll say, well, we watch Disney movies. And I've been to the home of preachers and Christians who would never watch TV or the movies, but yet they have the whole library of the Walt Disney movies. You know those white plastic cases? And they have them all lined up, and I mean, they have tons of them lined up, scores. I don't know how many there are, but there's hundreds of them. They have them lined up and lined up, and they have their kids watching those movies all day long. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to prove to you right now that those movies are wicked. Say, what? Disney movies? Come on, you're crazy. They're rated G. Well, let's see. First of all, did you know this? Did you know that Disney movies are filled with subliminal messages? Subliminal messages. Now, what are we talking about tonight? Sorcery. What are we talking about tonight? Getting inside your mind and messing with you, controlling your thought process by supernatural means or demonic means. Or hey, I'm going to tell you something. Disney movies are filled with subliminal messages. And you say, oh, that's a hoax. I've seen it with my own eyes. When I was a teenager, I had a friend of mine sit me down at his house and show me the subliminal messages in the Disney movies. They're filled with subliminal messages. Let me give you some examples. The Lion King, filled with subliminal messages. Okay, all throughout the movie, there are pornographic pictures hidden in the movie. Like you'll be watching the movie, and just for a few seconds, something filthy will come on. Like off to the side, there'll be some kind of a, reproductive anatomy will pop up, over here, and then over here. There's this one point where the lion, he kind of goes like this, and a cloud of dust comes up and just spells the word sex. And the word sex is put in the Lion King movie subliminally, literally hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. The shapes on the screen will spell the word. And I've seen it. I mean, I had my friend sit me down at his house and pausing the movie, showing me the word sex popping up on the screen at different times because he knew where they were. And he would show me these things. Another one, and they all are filled with it. Aladdin is another one. In the movie Aladdin, there's a part in the movie where the guy, what's his name, Aladdin? There's a point in the movie where he tells Jasmine to take all her clothes off. But you don't even know it unless you know it's there. You listen to it, and he mumbles it kind of under his breath.
Leave me alone.
So how's our little Bo doing? Come on, good. Take off. So how's our little Bo doing? Come on, good. Take off. On good kingers, take off. On good kingers, take off.
And I mean, once you know it's there, you hear it just as clear as day. But you didn't know that it was there, you wouldn't hear it. And The Little Mermaid has a filthy picture drawn in the cover on the front of The Little Mermaid. And nobody would realize it until somebody shows you and says, look at this. And you look at it, whoa! And all throughout the movie there are scenes, I'm not even going to describe some of the scenes in The Little Mermaid, where subliminal messages are coming on the screen. The other movie, Beauty and the Beast. There, a nude woman pops up a few times in the background of Beauty and the Beast, filled with subliminal messages. Your kids are watching it, and their mind is maybe not even seeing it, but it's going into their subconscious. Words flashing on the screen over and over. sex, nudity, filth, just all the smut is just coming on the screen. Oh, those movies are harmless. They're filled with subliminal messages. Who knows what your kids are being programmed? Oh, but you know what? I'm sure that it's only just the Disney movies. I'll guarantee you it's the rest of Hollywood probably doing the same thing. And these Disney movies, at first when I was a teenager and somebody showed me this, I thought it was just a couple movies, a couple scenes. But as time has gone on, I've realized that virtually every Disney movie is packed with hundreds of subliminal messages to program the minds of your children. Okay, but then forget the subliminal message. Just the message of the Disney movies is perverted. Even if you just forget the subliminal message. I mean, forget what movies did we bring up? The Little Mermaid. A half animal, half human being. And that's perverted in and of itself. All throughout the Bible, every false god is a half animal, half human being. They're constantly merging of animals and human beings. It's paganism. It's wicked. And yet every Disney movie is pretty much based on the merging of a human being with an animal. It's described in the Bible. And the movie The Little Mermaid, she's topless the whole time, right? She's just wearing like a bikini top. How is that? Is that how you want your daughter to dress? But there's no cussing, there's no nudity. Do you want your daughter going around in a bikini top? Is that modest apparel? Is that what Jesus Christ would have you to wear, ladies? No. The movie's filled with Satanism, witchcraft. There's some, Ursula, some witch that's casting spells and using sorcery and demonism. Oh, pretty innocent, right? All of them are filled with it. In the movie Beauty and the Beast, the whole first half of the movie is these prostitutes in the town that are dressed just half naked, dancing around, admiring this guy, the big, strong, handsome guy. But all these girls are dressed indecently. They're obscene in their gestures, subliminal messages. And then the whole movie is basically just exalting a certain physical standard of appearance. Beauty and the Beast is a movie about a woman who falls in love with an animal. And in the movie they keep acting like, well, he's just ugly. He's not ugly, he's an animal. But there's a difference between being ugly and being a beast, being an animal. And if you've seen the cartoon, it's an animal. It's like a dog. It's like a big dog man or something. I mean, it's clearly an animal, and yet she falls in love with him while he's an animal. You know, only when she kisses an animal does he become a human being. Oh, wow. And you say, well, what's wrong with that? Read the Bible sometime.
Upon a tree, I know you. That look in your eyes is so familiar, ugly, and I know it's true that visions are seldom all they seem. But if I know you, I know what you'll do. You'll love me at once, the way you did once upon a dream. But if I know you, I know what you'll do. You'll love me at once, the way you did once upon a dream. I know you, I walked with you once upon a dream. I know you, that gleam in your eyes is so familiar, a gleam, and I know it's true that visions are seldom all they seem. But if I know you, I know what you'll do. You'll love me at once, the way you did once upon a dream.
You see? I'm collecting stupid little boys. Stupid little boys? You know, the disobedient ones what play hooky from school. Oh. And you see... Yes. And I takes them to Pleasure Island.
Ah, Pleasure Island.
Pleasure Island? But the law, suppose they... No, there's no risk. They never come back as boys.
I know that Disney is a big deal now and has always been a big deal, but those of you under like 70 years old don't have a clue just exactly how big Disney was during the Renaissance era. Allow me to clue you in. One thing that I'll never forget is my grandfather telling me about how, when he was a little boy, he went to see Snow White at the movies multiple times, and it was astonishing to him back then. Folks back then were being hit with new technology left and right that was mind-blowing for them. Black and white movies were incredible enough as they were, with the first real movie releasing in 1906, but then cartoons were soon brought to the screen around 1908, just 2 years later, which introduced people to different art styles and whimsical storylines while remaining lighthearted and entertaining for the entire family.
Follow the ball and join in, everybody. The sun shines bright in my old Kentucky home. 'Tis summer, the darkies are gay. The corn tops high and the meadows all in bloom.
If this wasn't mind-blowing enough to occur in such close succession, the very first colored cartoon was released in 1930, making 1937's Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs one of the very first colored cartoons to be seen in history. Furthermore, the incredibly high quality of Disney's Snow White was from the likes no one had seen before. This is what separated Disney from all the other studios at the time. The impact of this caused a ripple effect that we still see the remains of today. The impact caused society to feel dedicated to Disney for generations, regardless of what films they release or how poor the quality is. People have complained a lot over the last several years about Disney's declining quality and increase in woke garbage. Yet these same people remain loyal to Disney, buying their merchandise, spending thousands to visit Disney World and Disneyland, and if Disney happens to release another disappointing movie and all else fails, well, then all you gotta do is pop in an old Disney Renaissance movie and all is forgiven, right? The Disney Renaissance era was imperative because if the Disney Renaissance era did not occur as gracefully as it did and at the time it did in history, it would not have been able to sink its hooks into society as deeply, causing such intense loyalty to such intense government-created propaganda. I do not believe for one moment that it is a coincidence that Disney's demoralizing content is steadily increasing along with Satan's schedule, and I find there being no coincidence in their hiring of Tim Burton. Chapter 2. The Talentless Hack. Disney's insistence on paying a man to do nothing!